Hello and welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthra. 1,600 people have been killed in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, which has entered the fourth day. Israel continued to attack the Gaza Strip with airstrikes. It has announced a total blockade on Gaza, which included a ban on allowing food, fuel and medicines in the Palestinian enclave. The Israeli military claims to have secured the border regions with Gaza. Israel has amassed troops at the border, but no word yet on a potential ground invasion. With Israeli bombs hitting residential areas in Gaza, international agencies have called for a humanitarian corridor. The UNICEF, the UN human rights body and WHO have called for a safe passage to evacuate vulnerable groups, the wounded and ensure medical and food aid. The UN Secretary General said he was distressed by the siege in Gaza, which is one of the most densely populated regions in the world. Meanwhile, the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, has denied any link to the Hamas attack. However, he praised Hamas and said Israel has suffered a military and intelligence defeat that is beyond repair. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu equated Hamas to savages and promised to finish the militant group. Netanyahu also dialed Prime Minister Modi, who has released a statement. PM Modi said India stands with Israel in this difficult situation and condemned terrorism in all its forms.
The people who support Hamas are fully responsible for this appalling attack. They are not militants. They are not freedom fighters. They are terrorists.
Hamas terrorists bound, burned, and executed children. They are savages. Hamas is ISIS. And just as the forces of civilizations united to defeat ISIS, the forces of civilization must support Israel in defeating Hamas.
I am deeply distressed by today's announcement that Israel will initiate a complete siege of the Gaza Strip, nothing allowed in, no electricity, food or fuel. The humanitarian situation in Gaza was extremely dire before these hostilities. Now it will only deteriorate exponentially.
And joining us now to take this discussion forward is Joel Leon, diplomat and deputy spokesperson for Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We're also joined by Brahma, Chellaney, strategic affairs expert on the program. Thank you very much for joining us. Ambassador Leon, let me begin by asking you about the death toll, about the number of Israeli people taken hostage by the Hamas. Where does the figure stand as of now?
Look, first of all, I wish to say something about how you presented the conflict, with all the respect due to your station. Israel was attacked on Saturday morning by terrorists who came into villages, civilian communities along the border. They seized houses. They slaughtered children and women in their beds. That's how it began. So now showing the Israeli airplanes pouring bombs on Gaza doesn't explain the situation. I don't know if the viewers understand what happened. We have to, first of all, to remind something. 900 Israelis were slaughtered by barbaric attack of Hamas terrorists who entered the sovereign territory of the State of Israel and cruelly slaughtered people. So let's begin to put the facts how they are. And yes, Prime Minister Netanyahu was equivalent Hamas to ISIS, to Daesh. There is no other equivalence that we can do. Israel is on the right side of history. We have the right to defend our sovereign territory. That's a point that everyone should understand. And if we got such a blow, you know, Khamenei said that Israel got a blow and so on. Yes, we got like a knockout, but like a knockout in boxing, it's not a knockout. It was a hard blow, but we stand up on our feet and we are rebuilding everything, and we will show to our enemies that they should think about attacking us again. 900 Israelis were killed. 900 Israelis, 2,700 people are in hospitals. More than 5,500 rockets were launched on Israeli civilian areas inside the sovereign territory of the State of Israel. Please, please, put the facts how they are. We haven't begun this thing. We didn't want this war.
Right. Ambassador Leon, you're absolutely right, and we do understand that. This is a rolling coverage that we have on CNBC-TV18. We have been continuously saying that this was an attack initiated by the Hamas. What I would also like to ask you about is a joint statement coming in from US, France, Germany, Italy and UK. They have pledged support to Israel. How would they be helping Israel in defending itself? Two countries at least have said that they will not be putting men on the ground. How can we expect these countries to come to the defense of Israel right now?
First of all, we thank anyone in the world who is solidary with Israel for the solidarity that they show. I know that also in India, a lot of people are solidary with Israel. And thank you very much for this solidarity. It is very important because we are in a war. We are in a war where we were attacked on our territory. We are in a war where we have to defend ourselves. And having a strong back of countries, it's very important. We don't need soldiers on the ground. The Israeli army is strong enough. We don't need the countries to send their people to fight for us. We will fight for us. We will fight for our freedom. We will fight for our lives. But for us, it's important that the world understands that we have the right to self-defense. So this statement is very important for us, that we know that the world understands what we are doing, that the world understands that we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. We have to find these barbaric animals from the Hamas.
Right. I'd request you to stay on with us. Well-known strategic affairs expert from India, Brahma Chellaney, is also with us. Mr. Chellaney, how do you see the present conflict? The likes of Saudi Arabia, China have called for a credible process to reach a two-state solution. How do you read these statements right now?
Hamas's terror offensive was unparalleled in complexity and sophistication. There's never been a terrorist offensive of this kind. This multi-pronged attack on Israel has been a wake-up call for all countries that are on the front lines of fighting terrorism, including India. The important lessons even for India, because the most important lesson is never rest on your oars, because the terrorists will innovate. They'll find new means to attack. Therefore, just don't try to prevent the last attack that you suffered. Think of new methods that terrorists might employ against you. This is the lesson for all, Israel and other countries on the front lines against terrorism. But speaking about the fallout of this conflict, it's unfortunate that some countries, including China, are refraining from condemning Hamas's terror offensive. China, for example, pretends to be a neutral party. How can it be neutral? After all, what has unfolded is not just unparalleled, it's brutality of the worst kind against innocent civilians, including women and children. But I think this war that is now unfolding will have regional and international repercussions. It will heighten tensions, geopolitical tensions. The role of Iran and Qatar in aiding and abetting Hamas will come under international scrutiny. Saudi Arabia was trying to reach a normalization deal with Israel. One wonders whether those negotiations would suffer a setback, or at least for the time being, those negotiations will be put on hold. But the fact is that there's a danger that the spillover effects of this conflict could engulf some other countries.
Important points there. Let me go back to Ambassador Leon at this stage. Ambassador Leon, as we spoke earlier, there are countries calling for a credible peace process leading to a two-state solution. Do you think there is any road for peace, any room for diplomatic negotiations at this stage? What would you like to say to countries who are asking for a two-state solution and sticking to that path?
I want to tell them that we are in war. We are now in war with a fierce, cruel enemy. We are in war with an enemy of democracy. We are in war with an enemy of freedom. We are in war with an enemy of humanity, of mankind. That's the war that we have right now. And to tell the countries now to come to the two-state solution or to find a credible peace process, yes, maybe, but not now. Now, we have to fight our war. Now, the state of Israel is first of all fighting. The people of Israel are united. If somebody saw, because of what was in the last months, and thought that we are not united, Israel is united. We are a democracy. We are a loud democracy. We have a lot of discussions. But one thing is sure, that when it comes to fight our enemies, we are united. And Iran can deny whatever they want. Money comes from Iran to arm the Hamas. Arms are coming from Iran to arm the Hamas. Hamas is ISIS. Hamas is our killers. And that's what the people of the world have to understand. We are in a war. After the war, let's talk about other things.
All right, so no immediate road to peace, no negotiations as of now. Currently, Israel is in a state of war. This is what the deputy spokesperson of the Foreign Ministry of Israel is saying. Mr. Leon, please stay on with us. We also have Professor Francis joining us. Professor Francis, give us a sense of how the life of the ordinary Israeli has been impacted right now. How will the country bounce back from here?
It's Professor Francis Raday. Everybody is in a state of real shock. It's tragic. The population of the what's called the Otef Aza, the settlements around the Israeli side of the border with Gaza, have been so severely hit. Some of their communities have been decimated. There are still 130 at least hostages being held in horrible conditions. Firstly, the taking of hostages is in itself contrary to international humanitarian law. And they have taken hostages from the age of 2 months to the age of 80-odd. And knowing that these people are being held as bargaining chips in a totally illegal and very inhumanitarian way, and we saw them being mistreated, badly mistreated. One woman who was being dragged around naked in the streets of Gaza to show off the success of this Hamas massacre. So how can we all feel? We all feel devastated.
Right. Absolutely. And Brahma, Chellaney, coming back to you, what is the risk of this conflict escalating from here? Yes, Israel has made it clear that they want to eliminate all resources that Hamas has. What is the danger of this conflict escalating, maybe more nations getting involved?
I don't see more nations getting involved in this conflict. The risk is of geopolitical tensions engulfing more countries. But I don't think the war is going to involve more parties. Israel faces difficult choices. After all, the Hamas is operating out of Gaza, which is one of the world's most densely populated regions. They're using civilians as human shields. Right now, the Israeli military is trying to degrade the Hamas infrastructure before any Israeli invasion of Gaza occurs. If the Israelis invade Gaza, it can only happen once they believe they have sufficiently weakened and demoralized the Hamas. Only then would the Israeli forces invade Gaza. But the problem is this, is that Israel is trying to degrade the capabilities of Hamas, but in the process, because the Hamas is using civilians as human shields, civilians are getting killed. And for some in the world, the focus is shifting to the civilian deaths and the civilian destruction in Gaza. After all, there was immense international sympathy for Israel. But now, as the UN Security Council chief said earlier today, that he said he was distressed, disappointed over Israeli strikes on hospitals and schools. Now, if this kind of narrative picks up momentum, it'll create more diplomatic headache for Israel. Israel's operation against Hamas is going to be an operation, a difficult operation. It'll take time for Israel to be successful in degrading Hamas's capability in a meaningful manner. Hamas cannot be destroyed, but it can be weakened to the state of Israel. That probably is the objective of Israel right now.
Okay, we have to take a short break at this point, Mr. Chellaney. I'll request all our guests, Ambassador Leon, Professor Francis Raday and Brahma Chellaney, to stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. You're watching Global Eye. We still have with us Joel Leon, diplomat and deputy spokesperson for the Israeli Foreign Ministry, Francis Raday. Also with us, Brahma Chellaney, strategic affairs expert. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. Professor Francis Raday, I'd like to ask you about the impact on women and children in this war. It is an all-out war right now against the Hamas. The toll and impact on women and children, according to you.
Well, I'd like to start off by agreeing with the previous speaker that the way of dealing with Hamas has to be a more sophisticated way than just bombing. I hope it's not indiscriminate bombing, but if it is indiscriminate bombing. And one of the things we have to take into account is that our government has preferred Hamas over the Palestinian Authority and has in fact financed Hamas. And one of the reasons that Israel was so unprepared for this attack was because the government was convinced that Hamas was more interested in the economic cooperation with Israel and with Qatar than in making war. And so they ignored the fact that Hamas is a terrorist organization, fundamentalist terrorist organization, which is very bad for the inhabitants of Gaza, not only for the Israelis. And so that mistake has to be changed. The strategy has to be changed. And you talk about a two-state solution. The Palestinian Authority is a potential partner for a two-state solution. And the emphasis should be on developing the capacity, the capabilities of the Palestinian Authority, in my view.
All right, that is an important point. Ambassador Leon, coming to you, will this particular war change Israel's strategy in dealing with Hamas, with the Palestinian Authority?
Look, before answering your question, I want only to stress something. When we are bombing in Gaza, we do our utmost not to bomb civilians, not to bomb hospitals or schools. The problem is, as the strategic affairs expert said, the problem is that Hamas is taking human shield, hiding in hospitals, hiding in schools. We are trying to target only Hamas. We are looking only for Hamas, and that's the huge difference. Hamas was looking for civilians. We are looking for Hamas terrorists. We are looking for the leaders of Hamas. We ask the civilians to leave. We ask the civilians to go south when we are bombing north, or to go north when we are bombing south. We are asking Hamas to stop fighting, to stop taking hostages, to stop taking their own people hostages. Now about the outcome, as I said before, we are in war. Let's finish this war and let's talk about everything afterwards.
Ambassador Leon, one more question, and this is something from an Indian point of view. There are about 18,000 Indian citizens in Israel, about 900 Indian students, according to the Indian embassy. Has the Indian government sought safe passage for them? Are they in touch with you to maybe evacuate these Indian citizens?
Look, I cannot say anything about it. I don't know. That's what I can say. I don't know. What I can say is that if they are in Israel and they are in places where there are bombings, so they know what to do, they know where to go when it's happening. It's very important to do what you're asked to do. About casualties, I know that there were no Indian casualties that we know about, and I really hope that it will continue like this. Other countries have sent their planes to take the people out, and I won't involve in internal Indian policy and internal Indian decisions.
Right. Let me also get in a word from Brahma Chellaney at this point. Brahma Chellaney, how do you think India will be impacted by this conflict? We have huge stakes as far as our relationship with Israel goes, the Middle East goes. We recently signed the IMAC corridor deal as well. How does India stand to be impacted and drawn into the conflict, not directly, but geopolitically?
There's already one major war raging, the war in Ukraine. Now there's a second war that has started. Given the fact that the first war in Ukraine is already having a global impact, the second war that has just started will increase the global fallout of conflicts. So in that sense, no country will remain unaffected by the two wars. But I think there are important lessons that India can learn from the way the Hamas managed to execute its terror offensive against Israel. Israel had built this aura of invincibility. It had erected this wall around Gaza. It had spent $1 billion in building that wall. So Israelis came to believe that they were secure. Now, building a wall like Trump administration sought to do on the border with Mexico to keep out illegal migrants is one thing. But as we have seen from the Hamas operation, that they just blew up sections of the wall with explosives. So the lesson for everyone is that you have to stay one step ahead of the terrorists. We often focus on how we can prevent attacks that happened in the past. How do we prevent a repeat of those attacks? That's the focus of counter-terrorism strategies often. No, for counter-terrorism strategies to succeed, we have to think ahead, think of how terrorists would innovate and bring surprises on us. That's how you can succeed. And that's the biggest lesson. And the other lesson that we have to learn from the Hamas terror offensive is that no terrorist organization can sustain itself without some state sponsorship. Hamas has had state sponsorship. Qatar has bankrolled Hamas. Iran has provided money and weapons. And India knows that the terrorism that India confronts is because Pakistan is a state sponsor of terrorism. The terrorist groups in Pakistan are of Pakistan's intelligence service, the ISI. And therefore, it's very important to impose sustained costs on the state sponsors of terrorism. That's another lesson that India has to learn.
Okay. All right. Professor Francis Raday and Brahma Chellaney, thank you very much for joining us on this program. It's a wrap on this edition of Global Eye. More news and updates continue right here.